Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. So we can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out, letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're gonna go out and follow our sign guys and get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. We've come up to perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple. Quick.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914, Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please, how can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. Say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well, then we found a support person, and they responded immediately, and we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Edson.
Since this is a cooperative agreement, is this similar to like when we buy things through the market?
It'd be similar. We don't buy through them.
We moved to Lee Summit right before we had our third child, and we ended up raising all 4 of our children here. And it's been just such a great place to raise kids. Well, I'd been involved in government and politics for a long time, different aspects of it. And then when I was raising my kids, I was very involved in different community organizations and involved with the schools. And as my kids got older, and I saw them and their friends starting to leave the community, I realized that there were some things that needed to be done in order to attract younger people back to Lee Summit, and I wanted to be part of that conversation. We need to work on economic development and keep trying to get more jobs here that pay well so that they will attract our kids. We have this great school system that we're all paying for, and yet our kids graduate and leave. We need to work with the school districts and with the businesses to create an environment that keeps our kids here. We have a great community with great housing, but we also don't have enough housing that is attainable for middle class. People who are just starting in the workforce can't afford to buy a house here at this point in time. If you take your average firefighter and your teacher and they're married, it's very hard for them to buy a house in Lee Summit. So some of my priorities when I ran were economic development, attainable housing, and public safety. When I ran 6 years ago, our police officers and our firefighters were some of the worst paid public safety folks in the metro area. And in the past 6 years, We've done a great job of getting their pay up, getting their benefits up, and now there will be a public safety tax, which will be a game changer for Lee Summit. It will help us to attract and retain new talent for the coming years. All communities are having a hard time recruiting and retaining police and firefighters. So if we can be a place that they want to come and is desirable, it's going to be great for the well-being of our community. We need to make sure that not only are we paying people well, but that we have enough fire stations as the city grows. We need to make sure that we grow the police department. Something else I'm really proud of, the replacement of Fire Station 4 and 5. I started taking council members on tours of Fire Station number 4 to show them how badly a replacement for that station was needed. There are so many opportunities to get involved in this community, whether it's serving on a committee, whether it's participating in the Citizens Leadership Academy, which the city sponsors. It's easy to sit at home and complain and think you understand how it works, and then when you actually understand how it works, you have a better appreciation for it, and you'll want to get involved more. I just wanted to clarify that. I think Hillary did a great job. Thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. May I please have a roll call?
Chair Edson?
Here.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Here.
Councilmember Hodges?
Here.
Councilmember Felker?
Here.
Planning Commissioner Arth?
Here.
Before we move on to approval of the agenda, I'm going to do a little agenda management. On the request of staff, we are moving item 5D, the discussion on housing inventory, under item B. So it will be A, B, D, C. Everybody good with that? All right. Thank you.
May I please have an approval of the agenda as discussed?
Vice Chair, I move for the approval of the agenda.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve the agenda. May I please have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Hodges?
Aye.
Councilmember Felker?
Aye.
Chair Edson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, I forget. I'm sorry, I'm still on roll call.
We have public comments, and first is Cinda Rader.
Good evening, council members. My name is Cinda Rader. I live at 212 Northwest Spruce Street here in Lee Summit. I come to you this evening as a resident and as a business owner in the real estate and development space. First of all, I would like to applaud the CEDC for their efforts in your Affordable Home Initiative. Chair Edson has been a constant driver on this. I appreciate all that you have done in trying to move this forward with the small lots, changes with our ADUs, and these type of things. So tonight I have 3 comments and questions for you, and the first one has to do with the impact fees, but the first one has to do with the affordable housing and impact fees. So as we know, the cost of housing is probably never going to go down, given the reason why we have a problem with affordable homes. The cost of materials, cost of labor, and land. So my comment is, in my research with the builders, it seems like our best option for affordable homes at this time would be townhomes. They could be built anywhere between 250 to 300, keeping to the 250 range. My question is, would it be feasible, trying to keep the cost of these types of homes down, to not have parks in these areas? We have 2 subdivisions now that I can think of right off the top of my head, and that's Newberry Commons and Oaks Ridge, that do not have parks. And they are a place, they're townhomes, and they're a place where new first-time home buyers come to buy. Secondly, in the past, and of course now, many developers, as part of their amenity package when they build their developments, put in parks, pools, and green spaces. They pay for those. And that's a way that they attract buyers to those subdivisions. And then those buyers pay for the maintenance and the use of those amenities through their HOA fees. So my question is, if you do initiate the impact fees, will those areas be waived, since those parks and amenities are already in those subdivisions? Thirdly, the park initiative is quite a lofty endeavor, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So my question is there a more equitable solution, if you decide to go forward with the impact fees, to raise the money to pay for the parks? Because right now, the developers, builders, and then ultimately consumers are going to be shouldering that burden of cost, because it comes with new construction, new development, and residential and commercial. Are there other options that we could look at, that you would look at, say, turn it back over to the voters to see if this is something that they want to pay for, if they want these amenities? with the sales tax, an increase in the sales tax or a bond or something like that, that would help take on that burden of cost if you desire to go forward with this, other than putting it on new development. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next public comment is Will Reuter.
Good evening. My name is Will Reuter, here on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City, located at 600 East 103rd Street, Kansas City, Missouri 64131. Just wanted to come as a follow-up to our discussion on January 10th, where it was made a presentation in front of this committee regarding the proposed fee structure for the continuation of funding, or at least the diversification of funding for the Lee Summit Park system. At that meeting, there was a couple of items that were requested from my organization, which should have been emailed to you this week, pertaining to I guess the relative nature of the fee structure in surrounding municipalities, kind of, and how Lee Summit is situated in those, as well as a bit of a snapshot from the development community. We did a survey between 3 of our land developers, prominent land developers in Lee Summit, and it was calculated that about 250 acres of privately funded, privately maintained recreational facilities have been included in those single-family subdivisions since 2008. So there is certainly an inventory of recreational facilities being added to Lee Summit's quality of life portfolio that folks are able to take advantage of. Things that may not show up on the parks inventory, but certainly things that don't show up on the city's balance sheet either, as far as what it costs to continue to maintain those. So I'd like to describe, kind of what constitutes an overall housing market in terms of 5 L's. Those are lots and the land that is on, labor, who's building the homes, a lumber, which is a euphemism for all of the building materials. Then there is lending. So what are the credit conditions on both the construction and the consumer side, the mortgage side? And then there's laws. What is the regulatory environment? And the confluence of those 5 L's, think about it in a Venn diagram format, where they come together is what is the universe of possible within a jurisdiction. That's what the market is able to provide. And so when we introduce new supply side constraints, be it a fee structure, be it a continued labor supply concerns, or disrupted supply chain, all of those pull their specific L circles away from the middle, thereby shrinking that overlap area and reducing the ability to deliver more diverse product at more diverse prices. We're going to hear a little bit later on from City Development Services staff about the housing components of the IGNITE plan, and recognizing that housing is of the utmost priority in this community as well as within the metro. It does stand to reason whether or not a fee at this point in time to fund a park system that is at least partially being funded by private entities investing in the community, it's the appropriate time to subordinate housing to that fee structure. And that's one of the things we're looking to hear, what the re-proposal was, some of the things that the committee had asked the parks folks to come back with and reconsider some things. We did have a brief discussion at our quarterly meeting, our touch point, we call it preventative medicine, that the HBA has with development services staff, where we say, hey, what's going on in the community? This is what we're seeing in the field. We want to kind of prevent things from becoming an emergency. So we get together and we talk about those things. And in that last meeting, we did get a glimpse of the re-proposal that's going to come before you. I would say that the preponderance of product currently coming online in Lee Summit will see a fee increase compared to what the original proposal was, and that's predominantly 4-bedroom homes. some of the things that I think your city staff is going to be facing in the coming year. Obviously, implementation of the Ignite plan and ongoing considerations for that. Going to be a lot of research, a lot of studying, a lot of trying to community engagement, trying to get us into a better path forward as it relates to housing. In addition to, this is a code year, so typically jurisdictions update their building codes every 6 years, 2018 being the last code cycle that was adopted by Lee Summit. 2024 is that next code cycle, and that process of analyzing the model code produced by the International Codes Council has already begun. So there's certainly going to be a significant workload and collaboration that's going to be going on between city staff as well as the industry and other stakeholders within the community to add the collection and enforcement of an additional fee structure. Again, we're always concerned about our partners in the city and city staffs because same in the residential construction space, workforce issues are a continuing concern, and we're always mindful of workload that we're inflicting on city staff as well as making sure that they are not overburdened by new and different things. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening and would look forward to any questions you may have throughout the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for telling me about the 6-year code cycle. I did not know that.
I need a motion for approval of the action letter, please.
Vice Chair, I move for the approval of the January 10, 2024 Community and Economic Development Action Letter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Felker,
Aye.
Chair Edson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges.
Aye.
Moving on to item B, ordinance number TMP 2917, an ordinance authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement for confinement of prisoners by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Johnson County, Missouri by and through the Johnson County Sheriff's Office.
Hi, everyone. Stephen Dukes, Captain with the Police Department Support Services Division, which encompasses dispatch, detention, and tech services. What you have in front of you is an ordinance as described for our agreement with the Johnson County Sheriff's Department so that we can house prisoners there where we don't keep them long-term at our facility. Currently, we have contracts with Andrew County and Pettis County, and this is a renewal of a contract with Johnson County.
Does anyone have any questions?
I did a great job explaining it to you then, didn't I?
May I please have a motion?
Vice Chair, I move to recommend to City Council approval of agenda item number TMP-2917, an ordinance authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement for confinement of prisoners by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Johnson County, Missouri by and through the Johnson County Sheriff's Office.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Chair Edson.
Chair, so you have any discussion of the motion? Can I? Actually, I do have one question for the
discussion. Yeah.
Is there any discussion?
Well, so I probably should have raised the question, and sorry. So if you would allow me to have a question. Captain, what principal differences between the prior contract and this one?
It's an increase in fees. There's minor differences as far as we previously had bed space reserved for our city. That is now a increase in cost, and we're not doing that. They've agreed that they will continue to house our prisoners, but we don't have guaranteed
dedicated beds.
Correct.
And that was part of my thinking was how much are we utilizing?
It varies. We typically don't keep people in our facility for more than 4 to 8 hours. Primarily,
You say four to 8 or
4
40?
to 8 hours,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
we transfer out.
Okay.
But it varies because we have people on long-term stays based upon criminal convictions. Plus, we have people that they're delayed for whatever the reasons for, as far as court cases being presented. So we have them pre-trial and post-trial.
Okay. Okay, they may come back and forth.
Correct.
Based on the circumstances. Okay, great. Thank you, Captain. Thank you. That's all I have.
Are there any other questions? May I please have a roll call?
Chair Edson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges?
Aye.
Councilmember Felker?
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to move on to item D, discussion of housing inventory recommendations and goals. Amy Nassif.
Good evening. I hope to have my presentation just as brief as the captain that was just up here.
I looked through it. There's no way.
So thank you very much, Amy Nassif, Deputy Director of Development. I apologize for my voice. But this evening we are here to discuss just a look at housing that we have throughout our community with our housing inventory, goals, how those goals relate to our IGNITE plans, both strategic and comprehensive plan, and staff's recommendations moving forward for this committee. So just a brief overview of why we're here this evening. You know, it's really important as we continue to grow that we have an understanding of what our community's needs are in relation especially to housing affordability and attainable housing as well. We also want to maintain being a community of choice and that strong economic growth. And as we all know, housing does relate, specifically to that economic growth that we have and being that competitive community in the area. Our IGNITE strategic plan and comprehensive plans both include a wide variety of housing goals and actionable items, objectives related to affordable, attainable housing. And then we want to look at how do we continue this path and look towards our future with those. So the discussion areas we have broken down about 4 different areas. We'll look briefly at just some updates to our community and housing data that we have. And then our recommendations that staff is proposing for this evening that we look into and dive deeper into and how those relate and tie in specifically with our strategic plan and comprehensive plan and that path moving forward, right? Because this isn't just a one and done or a one and done meeting. This is a long haul journey. That'll be a wonderful journey and well worth it. So see how to get there together. So first, let's take a look briefly at some community and housing data points that we have for everyone. So, hope that was a good picture. So, first we have is a population growth and projections, and this is out of our comprehensive plan. We've updated the numbers here, the development services team has. So these are our projections for about every 5 years through 2040. Where we are as of 2023 is just over 106,000. So we really are growing in that measurable way that we predicted that we were, and we feel like we're still on that trajectory. And when you're talking about population, it's also important with housing especially to look at what our age cohorts are and what our age groups are. Are we aging community? Do we have a lot of young folks? Because that really does then, impact the stages of housing that you have throughout your life. When we're younger, we probably all start off in a apartment or renting with friends, family. You might have a small, then your starter home, is what we used to call it, that small like cottage style home or missing middle home. Then as you grow and you have your own family, and then even we start to downsize again, and then as we get older and look for different needs in our housing that our community can offer for us. So having that diversity in housing is so important as we look at how that relates to our age cohorts. And as you can see, we have about 28% under 20 years old, and then the 55 over category around that same number as well.
How come you left the aging people just out on the street by themselves?
They are enjoying one of our sidewalks and connectivity for healthy lifestyles within the senior residential, place. And they're visiting friends and family now. They're all the way home. Yeah, that's a good point. That's funny. So our House of Housing data for you right now, and this is from the ACS Community Survey, which is the official survey of the Census Bureau. We got 2022 updated numbers for you. Some of these are in our Ignite Comprehensive Plan now from the 2018 survey, so we were really happy to get an opportunity to update those. Current households, we have just under 39,000. Our household size is about 2.6 average. The rental vacancy rate and owner occupancy rates we also have. Healthy market has, whether regardless of rental or ownership, you're going to be between 5 and 8% for a healthy market. So if we separate these out, you get 5.1 and the 1%. And then how does that look in comparisons to, are we more of a home ownership community or a renter community? So we have just under 25% renter occupied. So just some fun facts that help us kind of work on what our goals should be in alignment with those Ignite plans. We also have our median household income. This is again from the American Communities Survey. Is just over $103,000. Our average home price for sale. Now this is all types of homes, and this is whether new construction or on the market already. At last look was about $349,000. If you look at just single-family homes only, it raises to about $400,000. And then according to the national websites, if you narrow that down even further and you look at single-family homes on the market that are new construction, we're around $450,000. The median house valuations are around $291,000. And then the last number we like to look at, and always tracking, especially when we're looking at affordable, attainable housing and what our housing diversity can offer the community, is just under 22% of our total households in Lee Summit are cost burden. And cost burden would be that you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing costs, which includes utilities.
Ms. Nassif, can you go back 2 slides just for, and actually one of them, there we go. So first question is with the ACS survey, community survey, is that produced, we say 2022, is it the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, when, and is it based on data from, looking at the bottom line here and try to understand this. But what time of year are we talking about when we say what's this snapshot? Is it actually pulling from 2021 data and giving us at the beginning of 22?
Yeah, so ACS does both a 1-year and a 5-year survey. So this is the Census Bureau, so a lot of it is self-reported with the official census that goes out. There is a 1-year and a 5-year snapshot that they do. These are mostly the 1-year numbers that projected here. It's at the end of the year, so it shows the year prior.
Okay, so these are 2021 numbers that are reported kind of in the...
Yeah, and it's also what their trend expectations are. So this is the best estimations that we have at the time. Mm-hmm.
I might have had a question. You answered the question about cost burden. They don't go household by household, but they somehow have to, how do they analyze that? How do you come to know what the household, are they reporting that income level when that information is being gathered by the folks doing the survey?
It's the Census Bureau again. It's the census information that they receive. Mm-hmm.
Self-reported information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Unless, and I'm going to ask Ian if I'm missing anything. Okay. Ian Trefferin is one of our fantastic planners, and our senior planner, Shannon McGuire, is here too. This was a team effort, so I might tag a friend sometimes back and forth. So we all work together on that. So a little bit with our housing inventory as well. It's always interesting to look at what our living units are that exist. Like, what do we have on the market right now? as far as our inventory, especially when we're looking at the diversity, and do we have that diversity in housing stock and housing option types, like our Ignite plans have our goal set out to be. So this is where we are right now, and this is from Development Services. It was actually data research, parcel by parcel that was put together. It took several months of work. So just under 71% of our housing inventory in the market right now is single family, as you can see in the large blue. And then multifamily, which are going to be your apartment complexes, multifamily units, those are probably 14% right now, just for instance. Two family, which would also include duplexes, is in orange at 5.5%. So just an interesting snapshot of kind of where we are right now. And for the we do end of the year reports as well, so we thought this would be interesting information, just what did we permit in 2023? So what received building permits, and so we had, as you can see, we have our trends from 2019 through 2023. In 2023, we had over 700 building permits issued for residential, and this is for new construction. It's not for renovations or for additions or things like that. We have about 475 units for multifamily, and the bulk of that was Trilogy, North Point, and Streets of West Pryor, for instance. So just interesting to see the trends of the building permits that we've pulled. So then getting into, and we've talked a couple times already about the Ignite comprehensive plan, and as many of you may recollect, with the development of the Ignite plan, there was the development of how do we achieve the diversity of housing stock? What should that diversity look like? What goals do we have at the time for ourselves as a community? And what was developed out of the committee meetings and finally adopted with the Ignite plan was three basic categories. Category one being, I'll just say in general, because we have it on the screen here, the 65% for category one, like your large single family homes. Category two being your missing middle, your smaller cluster developments, cottage, duplex, triplex, things of that nature. And then your highest density is going to be that category three. So we put those numbers together for you of where we were. Again, this was an actual count of parcel by parcel count that we did in-house. It was quite an effort. So the Ignite plan, again, had the percentages here for you. The second column is what the projection for 2040 unit count would be. So so the Ignite plan projects by 2040 what we should have, what the need would be based on population projections that we talked about, with 59,000 or so. And where we are today is that third column. So we're currently at that 69, 22, and 9%.
Councilmember Felker.
So I'm just trying to make sure our numbers are lining up. So I'm looking at 69, 22, and 9. That's today.
That's today.
So if you could flip back a few slides. I wrote down 14% as what I thought might be category 3, but maybe my family right here shows 14.2%.
Yes, and this is going to be a little bit different. So this is just what we have in the market, our own, like basically off zoning and such, pie chart. The comprehensive plan, some multiplexes and some low-rise, like 1 or 2 story multifamily, was designated in the comprehensive plan as being category 2. So it's not an apples to apples.
How we need to get that apples to apples.
Sure,
That,
sure, we can certainly
I think
look
if
at
we're
that.
making policy decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Developers need to see where we're at. I just think we've got to somehow align that. I don't know if that means adjusting the plan itself or because otherwise I look at it and I think, well, we say this and we say that, but then what's
like bring it all together. Sure, that's understand. Yeah,
we can look at it over on Councilmember Felker. So I just no,
it's
I
just
agree.
different ways
I
of
agree.
looking at different data and such, and then the comp plan had its own ways of analyzing that. So definitely, we can certainly align that.
Say that we were analyzing it one way then, and now we're analyzing it a different way now.
Well, no, the other slide was just This is just a pure count. And actually there was,
parcel by
it
parcel
was just
count.
parcel by parcel, and could certainly have had different categories for you, or we could have done it under category 1, 2, and 3 this way, but we actually just spread it out more so you could see the different elements. We can certainly just change that slide. That's not a problem at all.
It seems like that would be helpful.
Sure.
Otherwise, when I see, I mean, I don't know how to interpret 14% under multifamily and not 3 unless we say multifamily is also part of category 2, where you say fourplex, triplex. That's what you're telling me, I think. Got to somehow kind of get that data out to us so we're seeing it.
So a definition of how are we defining multifamily?
Yes, so what we have, and if we want to, we can do two things. We can look at just, so right now, so the IGNITE plan, when the committee was put together and the comp plan adopted, these were the exact housing types by the category. And so what we can do is we can either, look at this again with you all, because this did determine that category 2 would have the lower density apartment complexes.
And that's the point. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to.
No,
That's the point. This is based on density. If I remember right, we talked about the plan being based on density as opposed to
type.
Okay. So it may not be feasible man-hour wise, parcel by parcel, and talk density. I don't know. How you pulled the pie chart you showed, you said was a lot of hours of time going by parcel to try to.
Yes, and that's actually how we actually came to this final count as well. It will take me just 1 minute actually to update that pie chart for you all too. So that is no problem. We can get it to you after the meeting even if you like. That's good observation. Yeah, that's very helpful. And we can certainly, I think we actually might already have that. We did many different iterations to see how and what, trying to anticipate the questions you may have. So this is great, and we can certainly do that.
Are you done?
I think so. Yeah.
Are you? Could one of you remind me, when did we start and complete the comprehensive plan, the IGNITE plan?
The plan was adopted by the Planning Commission in May of '21, but there was, I believe, 7 joint meetings between the Planning Commission and City Council up to that point.
And I was just talking to Councilmember Pryor because we have 2 people up here who were elected in 2022, and they're like, when was this done? And,
Yeah.
it all kind of melts together for me. Councilmember Pryor, did you have a question?
Thank you. How often is the IGNITE plan how often is it redone?
Typically, comprehensive plans are re-looked at holistically every 10 years.
So we're constantly looking at it and looking at and seeing where we are with it, because all of the reviews that come in, all the work we do, we wanted to tie back. But that's correct. When you do an overhaul, because of the amount of time and resources, and how your community's needs might change, it's not real quick, but it's also not real long. So 10 years is around that average. Now, if there's minor updates or small tweaks we need to do, that's certainly something that could be done a little bit sooner than that. But that's generally where we are, is that 10-year mark.
Okay. I just feel like it's a lot of apartment. If we're not even really close to the goal of apartments, that's just a lot of apartments. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for the feedback. Part of the discussion tonight is to get your input on kind of what we're thinking is, are we still on that same page with how we're going down and working towards these things. So this is very helpful.
Just a minute. Mr. Elam, were you wanting to chime in?
I was just going to say to think about this again as a 20-year plan. It's a very long-term look out. So, if you were to look back 20 years ago, from like 2004, what's been built in Lee Summit from? It's a significant amount of growth. So the number may look big just from a numbers perspective, but that is spread out over 20 years.
And I believe all the projections end in the comprehensive plan at 2040 to that point.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other question.
Yeah.
Were these numbers, so I know Discovery Park is kind of staggered out, like over 10 years? Do these numbers include all of the apartments that were from Discovery Park too? Or how does that factor in if it's?
The actual housing numbers at the very end is an actual count and study that staff did of what exists.
Of what
So it's
currently
of what
exists
currently
then,
exists,
but not what's currently been approved?
but not what's
Okay.
been approved. No.
Okay.
It's what
Thank you.
exists in the market.
So as those units are delivered over that 10-year period, when they are issued a certificate of occupancy, then they would be included as available units. But prior to that, they're not available units.
Okay, thank you.
So once it gets a CO, then we continue to update these dashboards, these dashboard numbers.
Okay. Are you, Councilmember Felker?
So there was a useful spreadsheet, and Mr. Elam, you might have been a while, that would provide the actual kind of compared with approved versus, and where it would be at in the process. It's been a bit since we've seen that. I don't know if it's being kept up, but I think that would help council members see like, oh, okay, here's where we're at, and if everything, because we've talked about the fact that sometimes things don't come online. Like it could be in the hopper, but something doesn't come through. So
Yeah,
that's still being
so
kept.
that spreadsheet was really based off of I'll say the point in time numbers associated that were done. So in 2017, I believe we could discuss updating the spreadsheet in a similar manner with the comprehensive plan numbers and maybe taking that as a more holistic approach, so we could have those projects listed out that may have been approved but may not be under construction. I know on that list there was several that aren't going to happen overall. But again, I think part of the challenge with this too is that the market is kind of always changing, and these are targets, and so the percentages, for example, they're not going to be spot on 100%, down to the individual unit. They do need to be looked at, and they need to be looked at in a way that just recognizes what they are as a snapshot in time towards a larger goal, and not necessarily towards a specific one-for-one.
Yes, I think we're ready.
Great. So let's not look at data anymore. Let's look at go to housing recommendations and goals, right? So we have this in 4 areas to our recommendations. When you're looking at housing, it is that holistic approach, and everyone has a part to play, from what our process and our code requirements are through community partnerships, engagements, and even economic incentives. So we broke this out into kind of 4 areas. When staff was pulling things together and doing some preliminary research on what we could or may want to, recommend and bring back to you all, these were kind of the buckets, so to speak, that formulated those in. So before we ever, look at what do we need to be doing, what should we be doing, it's always great to look at what are we doing? What do we have in place currently that is helping and does move the needle for housing? And so these were some areas I just want to touch on real briefly. Our project manager team, that project management is an amazing service that's offered in Lee Summit that most, if not all, other communities just do not have anything like it. It's really unique. And what that does, along with our development review committee, is it provides additional collaboration and communication to our development community. When you remove those roadblocks or the inconsistencies or the not understanding of requirements, it really does make you more of a community of choice to bring developers here. They choose us over other areas, find us to be really helpful to work with, and so that's just a win. And two, with processes and things, time is money, right? We always hear that, especially from the work that we all do. So you want to be as efficient as possible. So we have that really great system in place. Our transparency with review times, when you remove those inconsistencies or you remove that risk from the developers, then they're more likely to bring more different kinds of housing and more housing to your community because they know what to expect and what they can anticipate. And also, we've had some really great movement so far with our recent UDO amendments and projects such as accessory dwelling units, our small lots and cluster developments that recently came out of the CEDC that will be going to Planning Commission next month. Forgot what month that was in, next month. So what can we do and what opportunities exist? Some of the things staff is recommending that we do is just look at possibly doing a density audit of all of our residential districts, taking a look at all of our zoning districts, what types of housing are allowed in each district, analyzing that with what the density is, and then also researching maybe some new if there's best practices out there, what people are doing in the region and in the immediate area. Also taking a look at our public hearing process and our other development review processes just to see if there's any opportunity to streamline anything. Are there other types of processes or different steps that might work more efficiently both for staff in the city as well as developers? Increase our residential diversity in our zoning districts themselves. And I apologize, I have a typo here. What I meant to say was there's a couple areas in several of our districts where we allow townhome development, but we don't allow duplexes. And so, yes. And so things like that, like taking a look at it as like, why don't we? And one area that we did recently address was we don't allow single family in the R4 district, but we allow every other type of residential. So that is something that's going with those other bucket of UDO updates, but we feel there might be other opportunities to really increase that opportunity for the home builders within our zoning districts, and then any other opportunities or things we might find in the UDO. So those processes, streamlining those, removing those inconsistencies, things that they do, all those recommendations hit these objectives and goals of our IGNITE strategic plan. And I won't read them all to you, but these are exactly out of the IGNITE strategic plan itself. And then out of the comprehensive plan, the IGNITE comprehensive plan, these recommendations I just mentioned hits these goals for housing quality and housing choice. Yes.
Would you go back?
Yes.
Would you discuss item number?
I would love to. So inclusionary zoning means that you encourage or incentivize developers to include a certain percentage of either smaller lots or affordable lots within their larger development. And in doing so, you might have density bonuses or development bonuses in exchange for that. So it's called inclusionary zoning because you're including a wider array and options of affordability within a single development.
Oh, okay, so that would encourage. So that might encourage neighborhoods that have generational opportunities for housing. So
It could do that as well, yes.
You have starter homes and over 55 homes.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Mm-hmm. And if you have the same type of housing type, then a developer sets aside a certain percentage of those at a different price point. So still high quality development, but it might be at or right below market. So just different options to have diversity of housing in the same development.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And then, again, these are the goals that those recommendations hit out of the comprehensive plan. So the other area we looked at was community engagement and partnerships. Public-private partnerships are so important to housing and housing diversity and attainability because then you are all really working together holistically and collaboratively with the community. That includes local organizations, that includes Home Builders Association, Habitat for Humanity, MARC, areas and organizations like that. For the Mid-America Regional Council, we do have a Community for All Ages. We have gold status recognition through them, which is wonderful. We also participate in our first Suburbs Coalition meetings and updates. The Communities for All Ages is the plan for providing inclusive opportunities for people of all ages within the community. Home Builders Association, we have regular quarterly meetings, as Mr. Rudder even mentioned recently. Work with them and keep in partnership on any updates and things that we're doing, things that they're seeing and experiencing. Habitat for Humanity, we do currently partner and have some CDBG funding that we provide with Truman Heritage Habitat for Humanity for our home preservation program. and then all the local organizations and school districts and things as well. So the opportunities here was to continue implementation of our Community for All Ages plan and work that we have. We are also recommending that we find an opportunity to assist homeowners with the do-it-yourself renovations through education, outreach, and resources for them, possibly developing an FAQ page, brochures, or other social media tools. Housing choice benefits, providing ways that we can educate on the different housing types and the benefits of different and diverse housing densities and housing types to building and housing advocates. And then again, continue to build relationships with even major employers, healthcare providers, and others. And the goals that these would specifically hit of the IGNITE strategic plan are listed here for you. To encourage affordable housing, consider policies to diversify and educate the community. And again, these come straight out of that strategic plan. And then these are the goals that those would hit out of the comprehensive plan. So everything we're doing, we're trying to make sure, are we hitting and progressing in what was already established in our long-range plans that we have. And then finally, economic incentive opportunities. We'd be recommending exploring opportunity to reignite our home buyer assistance program. We used to have one. I think it stopped around 2019. It wasn't as efficient and as successful as we had hoped it would be at the time, but there are possibly other ways to look at that, to research. Other communities have it, so that might be something that we want to look at to see do we want to reconsider or not.
Could you give a brief explanation of what that looks like?
What it would look like in the future, we don't have that baked yet, but what it
Or
did
what did it look
Sure.
like? So we just have an idea.
I believe it was around $3,000 that was provided for folks who would qualify. There was a lengthy application process, and funding was provided, I believe, through CDBG funding, and it would be up to $3,000 to help with like down payment and the move and basically the closing costs or things for families or individuals who are buying a home. It was a little, I think, hard tracking, administration, things like that. Found challenges, but also it wasn't used very much or widely at that time. But these are something that some other governments are finding good success with. So we thought maybe it deserves, it's been about 5-6 years, another look and see if there's ways to make an improved one and bring back to this committee for consideration and see if it's something we might want to look at. Does that help answer your question for you? Okay, great. And so also the universal design and NOAA assistance, looking at researching, are there grants out there that we can expand our existing home repair program? Universal design is when you retrofit or build a home from basically scratch to help fit the needs of individuals who might have different needs within their homes. If they're you might need wider hallways, zero entry, into the home, lower doorknobs, brighter lights, wider hallways, things of that nature. And then also NOAA assistance is naturally occurring affordable housing units. A big thing with attainable and affordable housing is not just focusing on the new and the new construction. We have a lot of homes already in place, already existing, and as they age, we need opportunities to help families keep those in a quality and reinvest in those to repair those and do those necessary things to build back their equity so then they can move and go into a different home, and that opens up an affordable housing on the market as well. And then land bank or land trusts. Many cities in the area and also abroad are looking more at those and offering that more, and so that basically is when and a way to incentivize housing through a local government will acquire land, whether it's gone vacant, the taxes hasn't been paid, whatnot, and you hold on to that, and then you have certain criteria to be met, and people can purchase that property to build residential or build homes on it. There's a bunch of different examples locally. Blue Springs and also Wyandotte County has a pretty robust one with their website. So one recommendation we'd have was looking into that and researching that further to possibly bring that back for discussion. and then any other methods that we'd want to explore for incentivizing. And so what those would hit as well, again, those would hit specifically these objectives and goals of the Ignite strategic plan. And then for the comprehensive plan, these are the goals that those specific recommendations would hit as well. So what does that look like kind of moving forward? We have this one slide for you with all of the recommendations kind of put together in one. And so what we were thinking was for priorities is the items in red were ones that staff would recommend that we kind of start working on first and now. They're a mix of things that can be done a little bit sooner than later and a mix of ones that need some robust research. So we'd recommend that we continue with our complete the UDO updates that we recently came with you to discuss for the small, narrow lots and multifamily density that was approved from CEDC. It's going to Planning Commission in March. Also, the do-it-yourself renovation and education assistance, we get a lot of questions about that, so that could be really helpful and something that we could start away looking at those housing choice benefits. And then the research, the opportunities for creation of a land bank that take a little bit longer time, but again, we wanted some short-term and long-term things. This isn't a one and done, as we mentioned. We'd be have a lot of work to do, and this would be quite a while to accomplish and really ongoing. But so we were tonight. Our goal is just to get your feedback. What do you think of these recommendations and the priorities that we want to set up? To start working on to get that roadmap so we have an idea of what we want to start tackling or what we recommended. Does that work for everyone? In addition to the great feedback we already got, we'll go back, do that research, do our analysis, review, collaborate with the community stakeholders, and then we return back to you and continue those discussions. So happy to answer any questions and also hear what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things I want to bring up. I can't remember because your presentation and what's in our packet don't match. There's way more slides in our packet. Did you know that? There's a lot of information in the packet. So I don't remember if this was in your slides or just mine.
No, I apologize.
Oh, okay.
It was split in half, so a bunch of other stuff. It was like we'd be here for until the Chiefs win the Super Bowl again.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't want to do that to you.
No,
so
I figured you were blessing us and cutting it way back. So we always talk about the need for affordable housing, but we never define what that need is. For example, you had a slide in there about large employers. We'll talk to the large employers, and we know, like in the apartments, that we have a lot of people from the big hospitals living there, school district, the large employers. But where are the people who are the servers at the restaurants living? Are they coming in because they can't afford to live here? Do we have housing stock for those good people, people in the service industry? And I know Mr. Elam has that data because he told me one time that he could tell me how many people come into work and what they were making and things like that. So also, and this is where I can't remember if it's in yours or the other one, I think it was like 30% of 36% of fire and police live in Lee Summit.
Yes.
But where are the rest of them living, and why aren't they living here, and isn't an affordability? And so we need to figure out, I think we know that, but what's appealing to them, and maybe there's some opportunities. I'm kind of fumbling my words.
No, not at all. It sounds like it's looking at coming back with maybe just a discussion solely on workforce housing or that starter home housing, and that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, because I know we always talk about these luxury apartments, but not everybody who works here can afford to live in the luxury apartments. And then the flip side of that is council members always get beat up because we're bringing in more apartments, and it's a mess. So Anyway, like I said, I'm fumbling around today. Council members, does anybody have any comments? Can anybody help me out of this mess I dug myself into? Councilmember Felker's going to help me
So
out.
just to reiterate, when you say what's next, are you asking for direction, or you're asking us to implement these process of working through these various distinction is those things that are in red are things that would be new or that we haven't done before? Because I know Community for All Ages, I'm just kind of looking back through this list, those would be new initiatives.
Yes and no. So what we were looking for was, this is a overview of all of the recommendations that we talked about tonight. The ones in red is what staff is recommending we tackle first. So it's kind of twofold. First, what are your thoughts on our recommendations? Is there anything you want to add to the list, remove from the list, or want us to research? But then also get the direction from you all that, yes, staff can start focusing on these in red unless you wanted to change any of those. And we wouldn't go do these. It would be, these are what we're researching. We were going to flush these out and then return to you all and and show you what these specific kind of 5 things look like. In addition to, I had the 3 questions previously. Maybe take a look and return with discussion about workforce housing, update the spreadsheets on the numbers we discussed and identifying the specific developments as well.
We're being asked to say yes.
Well, we're being asked if we want staff to continue forward on researching that, and then I'll come back to this committee.
When we come back, it might be, yes, these are great, let's continue down that path, or you know what, let's second look, or let's pivot a little bit, or.
Yeah, and along with that, going back to what I was saying beforehand, I think having, for instance, I saw somebody the other day on social media who works at a local restaurant, and they were looking for housing. And they're like, I work here in Lee Summit, I want to find some place that I can afford to live. And they said, I want to live near work. And so I think that's a big problem that we have, and it's going to get worse as gas prices continue to go up. People aren't going to want to drive as far to come in for those jobs. So I think having some of that information, how many people are coming in, having to drive in because they can't afford to live here, but they work here, I think that would be helpful. Because that would give us a definite need, too. Councilmember Pryor, Dana, Commissioner Arth.
You said that you needed some help with what you said earlier, and I
always need help.
Well, yeah. I agree with you about defining what affordable housing is, because we do talk about it a lot, but I think all the additional things that staff has offered to do, that will continue to refine what is out there and perhaps help define the affordable housing. And also, with what you said about the apartments, the ones that are coming in aren't really affordable. They're higher rent. And so, as a council member, you get a lot of pushback for people that don't want apartments because they think it brings down property values, but they're not affordable apartments anyway. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that. I do have a question. What was the population projection for 2040?
At what? Whoa.
140?
That was 140,000 and about 138,000.
Okay. I think it was very helpful to see that pie chart and the distribution of multifamily and then the medium and then the single family, because the percentages are still highly skewed towards single family, and I think that's a misnomer in our community. People get really worried about the whole multifamily thing. It's still a very small part of the pie. So I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Councilmember Hodges and Pryor, do you have anything to add, or are you okay moving forward?
I just had a question about one of the slides. I briefly saw where it said address affordable housing stigma. What does that mean?
I think in this strategic plan, I believe, I want to pull it up. I believe it was.
I can address it, actually. Well,
I'm looking for the slide. I think it might have been, I'll let you go first, and then did I pass it? Oh, there it is. That's part of the education campaign is what I believe it was, with the benefits of different housing diversity type and housing stock. But
Councilmember Hodges, are you okay with staff's recommendations on moving forward?
Yeah, I am. I would love to hear more information about those. Yeah.
Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you. So I would like more information as well. But I do, so when you say workforce housing, what typically is the price range, or what exactly is workforce housing?
the workforce housing is typically going to be like your starter home. It's your first family starting out. It's your emergency responders, teachers, those in the service industry, nurses, things of that nature, where it's a smaller home. It's going to be below or at, below market rate. It's more affordable for certain professions.
And then when it says like incentives, would that be an incentive to workforce housing, or is that something that would you'd be able to incentivize any house, or what is that?
That was just on the table for discussion if there was any other incentives that you all thought of or you all had in mind that you wanted us to look into or that you had heard of.
Okay, I mean, I'm not super familiar with incentivizing single-family homes, so but I would like more information on it.
Sure. And if it's something that if you would like us to look into and bring, when we do come back, provide examples of other cities and what they're doing to incentivize single-family or incentivize workforce, that'd be something we can do.
I would like more information on that. Thank you.
And I think the conversations I've had has been the complication with the incentives is it going to incentivize the developer and then the home buyer doesn't get, then he goes ahead and charges the home buyer $400,000 or $50,000, for the house. So it doesn't go downstream to the home buyer.
Or incentivize the house and then someone turns around and sells it for what it's worth and then they pocket all that money. So, yeah, thank you.
So I think if you can figure that out, we would be grateful.
We will solve all the problems for you and then
great.
Come back when we're all
Maybe
done. Sure.
by next by
we'll come
March
back next meeting. Yes.
By next meeting, we'd appreciate that. Any other comments from council? Well, I think we're on the right track. We just want to make sure that we're serving the populations that need it. People who are working here but can't afford to live here. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to TMP 2923, an ordinance adding Article 3, Parks and Recreation impact fees to Chapter 19, Parks and Recreation of the Lee Summit Code of Ordinances. Mr. Snook.
Go. Thank you. Good evening, Joe Snook, Administrator, Parks and Recreation. Appreciate the opportunity and your time this evening. So we had a lengthy presentation last month, so I'm going to do my best to kind of maybe do a little bit of a summary and get us to the proposed changes that the Park Board considered and authorized. So, as I mentioned last month, vibrant community with a great park system. Parks are critical infrastructure, and our community loves our parks and has supported our parks through different mechanisms, either through surveys and or through financial mechanisms like our quarter-cent sales tax. We're an accredited agency, and we are also a gold medal winner. So we have a great park system. We want to make sure we continue to keep that great park system. As Amy was giving her presentation, there was a couple of notes that I made that I thought were relevant to tonight in the Ignite, and I think one of the goals that was listed for neighborhoods was to improve home value, the value of the properties that people have for homes, right? And one of the things that Parks does is help improve that value of those homes when they're in close proximity up to 20%. So one of the things that we can do as a parks agency and as a city is to improve those values is to make sure we have a strong, vibrant park system that's in close proximity to homes. The other note I made was as the discussion for attainable housing, and one of the recommendations that you asked them to go ahead and continue to look at is smaller and narrower lots. Well, what does that do? If you're making smaller and narrower lots, you're giving kids less place to play. I think that says, well, we need to make sure we got some green space for them to go and recreate and play and do all the things that kids do, i.e. parks. So I just thought there was a kind of a nice connection between her presentation and the presentation we have right now. So why is this important? As I mentioned before, we have our current service level is about 12.5 acres per 1,000 residents. The goal of the Parks Department is to have a park within a half mile of all residents. And why is that important? Because we know that if kids are close to parks, they're going to be healthier. We know that people will have better mental health. We know that people have access to the outdoors, and so we want to make sure that that's in a reasonable accessibility. As was mentioned, the projection is about 140,000 people in our community by 2040. To maintain the same level of service we have today, we would need to acquire approximately 500 additional acres for our park system. We know our current existing sales tax will expire in 2033, and that existing sales tax that we have today is already allocated to committed projects. So, and there's no guarantee that the voters would support a sales tax in the future, although I'd like to think they will, but it's not guaranteed. And of course, I think we all recognize that the cost of land and the cost to develop that land is just going to continue to increase. I mentioned our park funding sources last time, and I just kept that slide in there just for educational purposes, but for about 40% of our operational revenue comes from a property tax. As I mentioned, on a $300,000 home, the city gets about $830, of which about 10% or $84 actually goes to the park department, and that's what we use to maintain our park system in the high level it is today. I think more importantly, about 60% of our revenues are generated through fees and charges. So the typical park agency in the United States will generate about 25% through fees and charges, and we're generating about 60%. So I think we do a great job of minimizing the impact through tax dollars to support the park system. And then, of course, the property tax or the capital revenue comes from our existing sales tax, which then helps us do those wonderful projects like community centers, Summit Waves, park improvements. As I mentioned last time, just 3 projects we have that we would like to see developed in the future. Along with that projected need of 500 additional acres leaves us with a little over $54 million, almost $55 million in unfunded projects into the future. Just a quick summary. Again, a lot of work has gone into this. Park Board has looked at this. A lot of community input as part of the master plan process, which they were very adamant about parks maintaining and preserving natural spaces in our community, because I think that's important. They don't want to see all areas of our community developed. They'd like to maintain a lot of the open space for recreational uses. And then, of course, we were in front of you last month, and we went back to the Park Board, and I'll get you updated on that in just a few minutes, what their comments were. Excuse me. As I mentioned before, for us to purchase 15 acres at a very conservative cost of $34,000 an acre, and to develop that park into a neighborhood park would be an estimate of around $2 million in today's dollars. And then I thought it'd be good just to kind of review the ordinance. Once again, just so everybody's clear, what I'm going to review is the ordinance as it was proposed last month, and then I will go over the recommended changes. So start date of July 1st. Collection, the payment would be due at the time of the building permit application phase. The original fee that was proposed was $1,200 per living unit and 20 cents per gross square foot for non-residential. There would be an opportunity for credits and fee waivers as a part of this. That would include public facilities for government use. Schools would not be charged. Repair or rebuilding structures that have been damaged involuntarily. So if we had a natural disaster, anything that's going to get rebuilt would not be charged as a part of that. Development that would be exempt from local, state, or federal taxes would be exempt. Any redevelopment where there's an accessory use and no change in use, that would not be charged. And then if a developer would like to make park improvements that would be available to the public, we would be able to have that conversation, and based upon the improvements or the park that they'd like to build or whatever amenity they'd like to make available to the public, we'd be able to have that conversation, put a value to that, and then that would be a credit towards the fee. As previously mentioned, we'd have the community divided up into 5 service areas. The money collected would have to stay within that service area. I'm kind of slipping to my next slide. It would be used specifically for park land acquisition and park land development. We would not be able to use those fees to do maintenance and upkeep in existing parks. We also would need to use that funding within 10 years of the collection date. If not, there would be a refund process available. Applicants could appeal. They can appeal the applicability of the fee. They could appeal the calculation of the fee, or any of the credit determinations can be appealed, and that process would be, the appeal would first go to the city manager. If they weren't happy with the results of that, they would go to the park board, and if they weren't happy with the results of that, then it would be a litigation situation. Annually, there'd be a fee review by the impact fee administrator. If there was a recommendation to adjust that fee, that would be presented to the Parks Board. If they agreed that adjustment would be necessary, then that would come before the council through the budget process and the the schedule of fee process. As I mentioned, we presented to you in January. The comments that we received from all of you was to consider a fee adjustment for the residential development. There was concerns related to attainable and affordable housing. I think the request was to look at maybe a lower per unit fee, maybe base the fee on demand or a combination of both. And there was also a suggestion that perhaps the non-residential development could have a higher fee or an adjustment that's a little bit higher. So we went back to the park board. As I mentioned, the original fee, the fee that we proposed to the park board, which they approved and is before you tonight, would be a demand-based approach. So we would look at a $350 fee based upon the bedrooms in that living unit. So as you can see, any 3-bedroom or below would be below the original $1,200 fee. Of course, a 4-bedroom or higher would be above the $1,200 fee. And then the additional adjustment in the non-residential gross square foot from 20 cents to 30 cents. To kind of give you a snapshot of what that might look like from a projection standpoint for revenues, the original fee based upon the information we had of development over the last 3 to 6 years was just a little over $900,000. Based upon the demand-based approach and the 30 cents per square foot, you would look at our projection would be about $866,000. So about 96% of what we were looking at with the original fee is what we think we would be able to collect to help improve our park system. Go ahead.
Councilmember Felker's got a question. Help me understand the 3 years, 6 years. I don't understand that.
So the average units The data I could get for development services was 3 years worth of data. The average square foot that has been built that's non-residential, they were able to give me 6 years of data, so I just used all the data I could. I only had 3 years worth of data for living units. I had 6 years for average, or for the non-residential.
This is, when we talk about the overall number,
Correct. So the
gathered that those two data points, one comes from a 6-year data.
yes, yep, correct. And this slide was shared last month, and Development Services was able to update this for me. So you can see that the existing Lee Summit fee, development fee, right now is about $8,900. Based upon a 3-bedroom living unit with the $350 per bedroom fee, that fee would go to $99.57. If you do the math, you do a 4-bedroom home, you're looking at about $10,300 for the building permit fee. So what you see, what this tells me is our fees are currently kind of right in the middle of the metro area, and it will continue to be right in the middle of the metro area. It doesn't really scale it one way. It doesn't scale it higher to other areas. One additional change that the Park Board did not approve, but we would like for this committee to consider if you would like to move it forward. I talked with Development Services. They were a little concerned about the start date of July 1st for a couple of reasons. One, we make sure we can effectively communicate this to the development community, as well as make sure that we're able to take care of anything on the back end behind the scenes so that when this actually rolls out, it rolls out very smoothly. So we would propose that if you would like to move forward, you would amend the start date from July 1st to October 1st. And if you'd like to move forward, I think our next steps would be a public hearing with the City Council, a presentation, a public hearing at the next meeting on February 27th. And then if that was successful, we would look at a second reading in March. And so that is the update. I think really to summarize the two changes to the ordinance would be to move to a demand-based approach with $350 per bedroom unit as the fee and 30 cents per gross square foot for non-residential development, and then to amend the start date from July 1st to October 1st of this year. And that is my presentation.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will open it up to questions. Councilmember Hodges.
So I had a question. So from last meeting that we discussed this, I had asked you about the budget. Do you have those numbers that I'd asked you, kind of what's sitting in your guys' like total revenue that you've got sitting?
You talking about our fund balances?
Yeah.
I did not bring that with me. And as I mentioned, we have 9 different funds. I think our sales tax fund balance is probably upwards between $8 and $10 million, but that money is being set aside to build the field house, which we're aggressively trying to build, which will be a $24 million project. So that fund balance will be depleted very quickly.
So as of it says as of 12/31/23, fund balance was about 20 million, just over 20 million. So where's that being spent then?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So as of 2023, the end of December, between the 9 entities that you've got, it looks like it equaled out to be just over 20 billion.
Okay, well, I'd have to see how much is in each fund balance. I think the majority of that is probably in the sales tax fund balance, which will be used for the field house. That's money that we've been collecting to build the field house in the future, so we don't have to take out any financing to build that field house, which will be 24 million. We have a fund balance in Fund 200, which is our operational fund balance, but I think it's currently at about $50,000. We have we have the Legacy Park Community Center Fund, which is about $1 million. Legacy or Longview Community Center is a negative $1 million fund balance. So the bulk of our fund balance that you're talking about is sales tax fund balance, which will be spent on a field house and our pickleball court complex, which we're trying to get started here soon.
So are you saying that the field house is number one priority then?
Yes,
As far as, okay.
Yeah,
what I was
that's,
curious.
all that
Okay.
money in there is going to be depleted within the next 2 years when we get that facility in construction.
Okay, and that's banking on the fact if Shamrock goes through, the project goes through. What if that
If that,
does not? What's plan B?
we have an alternate location that we'll be able to build the field
Okay.
house on.
Okay, I was curious about that.
So
Thank you.
the field house, it's a top priority for the park board and for staff. I think, I would hope that probably by the end of this year, we're going to be in location established and design started. And we have an alternate location if need be.
Okay, I didn't know that. I will say, I personally am, I'm not a fan of what was brought back. I don't like seeing that things went up rather than, I mean, I know some went down, but this isn't necessarily the direction I wanted to go. It looks like, okay, non-residential went up. That's not something I feel like we requested. I don't like four bedroom, $1,400. I'm not a fan. I'm just being very honest. I'm not a fan of this. I was okay with the non-residential, the 20 cents. I didn't think that needed to move. But I'm just not a fan of charging a fee to the residents for any residential. Again, I think it's counterintuitive for us to just speak about affordable housing, but yet we're talking about, and you can say, oh, this is not much, but it's still money that we're adding on. And the fact that it's not going to necessarily affect the fact of whether a park is coming in next to their neighborhood, because I think you've described too that the more people move in, I mean, it's going to continue. What's been happening is what's going to continue to happen. The more people move in, the more revenue comes in, which provides another park that we're able to provide. And I don't see a problem with that. So I'm not a fan of these prices. I will not agree. I'm not in favor of this with where it stands now. I was hoping that a more favorable into the home buyer as far as prices would come down more than, I know there's a tier setting right now, but I'm just not a fan. I don't want to slap any more money on people buying houses in here. We want them to come in. You're talking about, okay, one bedroom, they're going to pay $350. That's a lot for a person who's working McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. So we can't say that we want more attainable housing and then slap this on. I just feel like we're not sticking to what we're saying. So I'm not in favor of that. Non-residential, I'm okay with, but that's just kind of my stance. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hodges. Councilmember Felker?
Here, thank you, Mr. Snook. Just clarifying, you want to go back to slide 16?
Oh, and I'm just going to interrupt you. Mr. Snook and I met a couple of weeks ago after the last meeting, and he brought in different options. And this is the option that the park board approved.
Correct.
Am I telling that story correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
This was the approved
Okay.
restructure that we thought we heard when we came here last month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Felker.
So just to review the prior iteration, 1,200 per living unit, and is that, just make sure I'm hearing and understanding clearly, whether I had a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, it was 1,200 per the new build.
Correct.
These are not fees we impose on any existing builds or wouldn't be imposed on someone who wants to build an ADU next to their home.
Correct.
I wanted to add a bedroom to my home. I'm not going to be swept up into this.
No.
Okay. Okay. So just a couple of questions. Today we were presented, well, previously by email and then discussed a little bit today. Were you given the same, I can't remember, were you on the same email?
I was not provided that information that was referenced earlier tonight.
Okay. Well, that's not very fair to give you too many questions about that. I think that would be helpful for you from your vantage point. Which was somewhat similar, some variances, maybe I think I wrote down slide 5 on my piece of paper. I wonder if that's the one that, you can go back to 5.
That's our unfunded project slide.
Oh, no, never mind, sorry, I'm confused. So go to the comparison of fees, yep, it's 18. Slide 18,
Yep.
permit fees. Yeah, that was the one. Okay, so so they've provided some data points that are, some are actually close, they're a little different, so I mean, I don't know where the information's being pulled from. I don't think they're wildly different. There might have been one on here that I think their data sheets as being closer.
Councilmember Felker,
Yeah,
if I
10,000.
may.
Yes, sir.
Staff has not seen that information either.
Okay.
On that, but I can say that this summary of regional permit fees is based off of an assumed house.
I'm sorry.
An assumed house, if you will, because all of the fees several of the fees are based off of a percentage, so they're not a flat fee.
Got it.
So depending upon what assumptions they used, is going to make there's going to be differences in that because the fees scale to the project.
Okay, and their form, I should tell you, says 2,500 square foot house with valued at 400,000. So
I think this was a 3,000 square foot, something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
And yeah, I'm not trying to nitpick this. I was just trying to get a sense of where we were and what was being presented by the builder. It's not entirely inconsistent with what you got. I guess that's the point. Is it's not too different. And if there are different assumptions, then yeah, they're going to be different anyway. So yeah, one of my questions was how do you respond to the data they presented? So you don't have that data, so I don't can't ask you to really respond to that. But I would say the numbers probably check out pretty similarly to here. So and frankly, as long as the same assumptions are used, they probably should be the same. But there is one data point that I think is worth just thinking through and is part of this conversation because it's how it's being presented is some of the information that was provided outlined different developments and would state what kind of acreage each provides by way of an HOA incorporated pool, green space, trails, and things like that. So I think that was part of what I wanted maybe dialogue with you about it, and I should have looked at the email to see whether you were included or not, and you weren't. So it may be helpful to have that kind of dialogue and just fleshing this out because it's, I think, a legitimate thought. Like, okay, if I don't live in Winterset, but I live in Winterset, there's some decent trails. There's a lot of access to trails. There's definitely some park space, if you will. I wouldn't say that it's always apples to apples in terms of what a city park is versus an HOA-provided land. And I know I have green space where I live, but it's kind of in weird corners and spots. Like it's not where I'm going to go in someone's backyard. I don't, and this isn't to be too critical, but when we throw these data together, there's probably some, whether we're talking parks or we're talking what HOA provides, sometimes green space can be, you know, I know my neighborhood, and it's not any on the list you provided, so. No one ever wants to buy from the HOA because they don't want to pay for it and they get to use it anyway, if that makes sense. So, but it's like between 3 or 4 houses tucked in somewhere. Anyway, I do think that's probably a conversation that I think as representing the Parks Department and bringing this back to us, it would be helpful to talk through that. Like, how is that different than what you're proposing and what the parks can do? What does that provide to citizens that developments might not, or how are they complementary, or how are they the same? So again, just there. I do think, and this is just me kind of thinking through numbers, because part of what I've said to others before is, well, if here's our need, if we establish these things, and I think this is slide 5, that's why I wrote slide 5 down. If we say slide 5 is what we want to do, then we either have to say, what's our path to getting there, or we say we're not gonna do it. That's where, I think one question Councilmember Hodges would probably, I think, maybe asking or thinking as well, if we have population growth, we see property taxes increase to incorporate that side of the budget, we see sales tax increase by virtue of more people coming in, and at least historically, the city's, citizens have passed a new sales tax with pretty large margin. That is a good margin. Not to say that we should just say, well, guaranteed, but I think it's that kind of forward-thinking assessment. If you could show us that even with that growth, that you still find yourself short, does that make sense? Like, that's where I think that showing that would well, if we want to take care of our own Mount Trashmore, right? If we want to do care of and this is where we go back to slide 5, and I'm going to look at it, so I'm maybe just turn to 5 here, if you could. Like right there, okay, if we want to do those things, the question is, can we do that?
Now the answer is no. Those are unfunded projects. And then if we would like to maintain the same level of service 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future that we have today, which is 12 and a half acres per 1,000 people, we will need to add an additional 500 acres and then build those 500 acres into parks. That's an additional $34 million. So right there's almost $55 million that we have in unfunded projects. The existing sales tax is been designated for projects that we committed to in the sales tax. Now, there is some park development that would be in that sales tax, but right now, we're still looking at, we're making projections for 10 more years for that sales tax. But right now, these projects are unfunded, and we have no money to buy the 500 additional acres. Something we'll have to give, right? We don't have those resources.
So relying on our current sales tax, and I know what you're saying, relying on our current sales tax, there are existing projects that we already have in a pipeline that include the field house,
Safety Town, a nature center, and Bailey Park redevelopment. I mean, there's a list that we have committed to that we are allocating those resources, or will be allocating resources to.
Until 2033.
Correct.
I think that data, that information you need to show us in bright, bold letters, because I think a very natural thing for me is to say, well, more people move to Lee Summit, more people spend money, well then, isn't there going to be more money available to do these things right here that we're looking at? This is on top of what's already been planned for that are already new projects. So again, I'm just trying to, I'm fully comprehending the need. Again, I think it's probably, at the end of the day, it's an answer. Do we want these things as a council, as a Parks Board? The Parks Board wants this. This is what you all are bringing. The board is saying, we'd love to have these in our future, all this. And it's consistent with our current service to our citizens by providing certain acreage per resident, per 1,000 residents. So I do think kind of fleshing out put the need here. And I think we just have to ask ourselves, well, are these things we want? Or do we want to say no? The answer is no. I think here, this picture on the bottom that's Eagle Creek, right? Backs up to that. The Park West Master Plan. I mean, this is saying let's create legacy on the other side of town. I go to legacy from this side of town. So having something like this over here would be nice. You've already talked about the field house and Bailey. Like, you're creating opportunities in other parts of town, and then Resource Recovery Park, whether we call it Mount Trashmore or whatever. I mean, this is super ambitious. I mean, major. Do we want it? I mean, it's exciting. I like it. I guess I'm generally in favor of this. I am thinking that there are ways to kind of communicate this, flesh out, connecting the dots. Do we want this? Well, if we do want it, how are we going to get there as a city? Because if we, like you said, if we don't do something, there's got to be something else we do. So if we don't like the fee, the question is, do we still want it? And if we do, then what other way are we going to do it? Because we can't just pull money out of the hat. Last little thing, 12 and a half acres per 1,000 residents. This was, I know, talking about data that was presented to us. I assume that data point does not incorporate whatever HOA provided private land, green space.
That's our park system.
Talking what parks
Correct.
is provided. So in my mind, again, Mr. Snook, I think a couple of things that I think would be helpful in just kind of helping us kind of reason. How is that sales tax currently committed? Oh, okay, well now we know what we've actually dedicated this future revenue. Kind of like this kind of slide 5, it's your, whatever that is showing that. And then the other is, we anticipate future population growth. Are there projections that say future sales tax growth won't be enough to fund slide 5? At up to 2033, your projections include a growth factor.
It does.
And so that's accounted for. Then again, we're saying, well, where do we want this or do we not? We need to find out how to fund it. This is one option, and this is what your board you guys have worked through it for a long time. Your next slide 6, right? You've gone through it forever, and this is what you all.
I could back it up even more. This started from when we went out and redid the master plan, right? It was a community-wide involvement process. Surveys, we had several community meetings. We sat down. We said, what does our community want? And they were loud and clear. First of all, they said, you need to maintain the existing park system we have. It's a great park system. And we know Lee Summit is growing, and we want to make sure we have a great park system in the future. Well, what does that mean? Well, if we have a great park system now, we look at level of service, right? And so when it came from Parkland, we just said, okay, what's our level of service today? It's 12 and a half acres per 1,000 people. Well, that seems like that's a minimum standard we need to try to keep into the future as our community grows. So that's kind of where we started. Second thing we heard loud and clear was people were not as excited. At the time we did it, there was a lot of development, residential or commercial development going on. A lot of trees were getting knocked down. They didn't like seeing all the trees and all these wonderful outdoor areas getting developed. And they said, Parks Department, you need to preserve these natural resources we have in our community. Okay, that's something we took under consideration. So as we worked through that whole process, we developed a whole series of goals and objectives, right? And then that's what we work with the park board, we work with our community, we work with city departments, we worked with several stakeholder groups. That's how we came up with these goals and objectives. One of them was, where do we find the resources to help us do all this? Because you guys have a lot of goals you want us to accomplish, and it's not free. And so we looked at different options, and one of them was the land dedication ordinance. That helps us acquire land, right? A developer would be required to give us a certain amount of land based upon the type of development. The other one was a park impact fee. Those are two very commonly used approaches throughout the United States. And so as we went through that process, the park board, that's when they vetted it and we got to the park impact fee. Trying to, as I mentioned last month, if you look at a service area, we estimate that if you were going to put that full burden on that development, in a residential development, it would be about $4,200 per living unit. That's what it would cost if the people that are going to get served by that neighborhood park. That's not a reasonable amount, right? And so we try to find, what would be reasonable? What would be a good, the taxpayers, at least some, are still going to have to help fund this through a mechanism, which right now is the sales tax. And that's how we got to the 1,200. It's about 25%. We said, if new people moving into our community who are driving the need for that park, because if these homes aren't built, we don't need that park, do we? I don't think we do, because there's no need to have that additional green space. But as these developments come in, people come in, they come into our community for a lot of reasons. Parks is one of those reasons. They want to be able to go to our great parks, right? And I get that we have subdivisions that have spaces. They have green spaces. They may have a playground. They may have pools. I've lived in 2 different subdivisions in Lee Summit, and both of my subdivisions had green space, and they both had pools. And both of them were designated for that subdivision. That's great. But what you don't get from those is you don't get practice space for our youth sports, which is a huge problem for us. We have so many youth that want to play, we don't have enough practice space. Where are they going to practice? And if you bring in 40,000 more people, some of those are going to be kids. And they're going to want to play sports. Where are they going to practice? I don't know. Probably parks will be a good option for them. You don't get practice space. You probably don't get programming space. We program in our parks. We have outdoor fitness equipment that we put in our parks. I don't see that in neighborhood subdivisions, and maybe they'll add it in the future. I don't know, but we program fitness opportunities for people of all ages in our parks. You don't get typically pickleball courts and tennis courts and basketball courts and disc golf. All these amenities that we put in parks, you probably won't see most often in neighborhood subdivisions. Those are the amenities that you're going to bring to this community that we have now that they'll want more of. That's what they want to do, those things too. So when you add this green space, you're adding a lot of opportunity for the people in those subdivisions to come in and recreate, to stay healthy, to work on their mental health, to bond with their family, to bond with their neighbors. And then I would also say that typically, and I think I already made that statement, but typically they're built for the subdivisions, which is great, right? That's a great amenity. When you live in a subdivision, you pay a little homeowner's fee so you can have those extra amenities. But people want the other stuff too. They want the park so they can go do all those other things that I just mentioned before. And I don't know where that comes from. It could come from a future sales tax. And do I think we're going to go out and ask for a sales tax extension somewhere in the future? Yes. Is it going to be passed? I hope so. Can I guarantee it? No. And at the end of the day, if we buy this extra land and we build these extra parks, that sales tax in our community is still going to have to fund a large portion of that anyway.
Pickleball court complex included in your current
Yes.
33, that part of the sales tax would be committed to that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't see pickleball courts popping up in.
And quite honestly, if you build a subdivision and you put a little neighborhood area in it, you probably do not want to put a pickleball court in that. One of the biggest issues is noise.
Yeah,
we're dealing with that as a profession across the country. We're being very strategic on where we're going to put pickleball courts and pickleball court complexes. But most likely, that would not be an amenity that you would see because it's going to become a noise issue.
Complex, if it's out, is it going to be indoor or outdoor?
Ours will be an outdoor complex.
All the trees around.
Councilmember Felker. Would it be okay if some?
Oh yeah, am I monopolizing the time here? Probably. I'll end on just looking back at slide 18 where we talk about the regional permit fees. I know none of us, I don't certainly like the idea of ever adding a fee or a cost to what we do as a city. And Mr. Snook, if you could slide to it just again.
Not hear me?
What?
No, that's okay.
I'm just saying quickly and then I'll be done. Just my observation is that, yes, it is another imposition of another fee. Are we, as we usually are, and this is credit to staff and where I think they've tried to keep us historically, and now we tend to be in the middle of the pack. And that, I think, is where we want to be as a city in a lot of measurements. This kind in particular, I think a lot of other measurements, we want to be the top of the line. As a park system, we want to be top of the line. But what we impose upon our citizens, this seems reasonable. I don't think $1,000 or even $2,500 is a massive difference for someone who's amortizing their purchase.
I'm trying to get you out of here so you can take your wife to dinner.
Well, it's actually, we do something for our kids tonight.
Oh, okay.
And they are the ones who are going to be mad that I'm not home yet.
All right. Councilmember Hodges.
So I was going to ask while we were on slide 5, but
You want me to go back? I'd go
well,
back to
I mean,
slide five.
you don't have to, because it was just a quick question. As I was looking at it more, I realized I was just curious why, for the unfunded park projects, why Fieldhouse is not a part of that.
Because it is funded. It's currently funded in our CIP, and we are collecting the money
Okay.
through the sales tax to build that in
Okay.
the next several months.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. Okay. For one, I'm not against the fee. I am a little discouraged that it was $1,200 and now for a 4-bedroom house, it's $1,400. So I would like to see that one come down. I'd like to see it, I wanted to see it under $1,200 because that seems to be a lot. I mean, there's not very many 3-bedroom houses being built anymore. I feel like a lot of them are 4-bedroom houses. So I would like to see that one a little bit lower. But when the sales tax is up, do you guys plan on asking for more or just keeping it consistent to what you're already asking?
Asking for an increase in the, right now it's a quarter cent. I mean, we're 10 years out. We haven't talked about this as a board. We haven't talked about this as staff. What I will tell you historically, when the sales tax was originally passed in 1998, it was a 3/8 sales tax. That really is kind of what jump-started the entire park system in Lee Summit. That's what brought Legacy Park here. We were able to buy the land and build it. That sunsetted in 10 years. We went out, we reduced that to a quarter cent. At sunsetted in 10 years, we went back out, we asked for renewal to quarter cent. That's what we're with right now. It sunsets in 15 years. I would anticipate, and of course it'd be depending on what our needs are, but I would anticipate that it'll probably be an ask of a renewal of a quarter cent. But don't hold me to that in 10 years.
Okay, I won't hold it. I just didn't know if you guys had plans on increasing that ask. Yeah, like I
If I
said,
can make a comment about the sales tax real quick. So in the state of Missouri, you can pass up to a half cent for parks and or stormwater, right? And you can either do that with a sunset or you can do that into perpetuity. Many communities pass their sales tax into perpetuity. We have chosen, and historically, and I think it's been smarter, but we've chosen to sunset that. And when we sunset that, we come forward to our voters and say, here's what we want to do with this sales tax, right? Here's the goals and objectives and projects like field houses and nature centers and community centers and parks. Are you supportive of us using that sales tax? And then they say yes or no. They voted 80+% yes. And that, I think that holds us accountable, right? We're not going to have a tax that just goes into perpetuity and we're never going to have to not look at that and not be accountable. I think this holds us accountable when it comes to our capital. Here's what we say we're going to do. We work very hard to go out and deliver everything that we can, knowing that there's a lot that can fluctuate over that time. And then we hold ourselves accountable and we say, this is what we did. And if we want to go back out, here's what we would like to do with that future sales tax. So I think it's a way that we hold ourselves accountable and the community can hold us accountable. And I think we've done a great job of being accountable over the last 25+ years with that sales tax. So I thank you for giving me that minute to share that.
of course. So I don't know from here, I mean,
I'll wrap that up.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Arth, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. So, considering how long our meeting went last night, everybody's really feisty. I did not anticipate this coming.
Is that just last night?
Yeah, no, seemed like a week ago. All right. So does all the projects we have approved that are being built are shovel ready, they've gone through the process but haven't got their permits yet, they will be assessed this fee? So Discovery Park,
Starting October 1st.
okay. How does that affect them when they've already done their financials? I'm asking brilliant questions.
It will have a financial impact.
Oh, no financial impact on them whatsoever? Or it will?
It will.
Oh, it will, yeah.
It will.
You basically said nothing. Okay. Okay, all right,
I met with Discovery Park prior to our first meeting.
okay.
And based on the $1,200 fee per living unit, the impact to them, if I recall right, and don't hold me to this, but I think it was like $1.2 million is what they estimated the additional cost would be for this park impact fee.
But if we do the tiered,
I don't, and
it's a little less.
that's why I
Yeah.
say that, because that was based on the 1,200. I mean, I can't imagine they're building a lot of 4-bedroom multifamily housing units. They might be, I don't know the extent of what they're doing, but most likely this tiered structure would be below that, because I would assume it'd probably be a lot of 2-3 bedroom type facilities, but again, I don't know that.
Okay. Councilmember Hodges, why don't you? That was a good question.
So that's talking about their multifamily, but what about the aspect of their commercial that they're building?
They didn't talk to me about the commercial. They were concerned about the multifamily.
Okay, so that's good for us to know. Oh, Councilmember Felker?
On the commercial part, you've generally said that all the developers you've talked to have not blushed, or they've not been concerned about the 0.2 or now 0.3 per square foot of commercial.
Correct.
Right? That's
The
the
20
feedback.
cents per square foot has not been a concern.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out if I had another question. So at this point, I'm kind of trying to figure out where everybody's at. So here, what I see are our options. And Mr. Snook and Mr. Elam, if you see it differently, chime in, please. Okay. We can take what they've presented and pass it with a recommendation to council. We can take what they've presented and vote on, to send it to council for discussion. We can torture Mr. Snook, watch him hyperventilate, make him come back and see us again, which frankly would be fun. But so I'd like to hear from you all. My preference at this point, Councilmember Pryor said, I'm not sure about the 1,400. Councilmember Felker, you had several questions about clarifying information, which I think may be helpful for other council members. So that's kind of where I'm at, is sending it to council for discussion. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And then we can kind of hash out there, and if they want to send it back, we can. So I'm okay with that. Just more opinions would be great.
Okay. Because I think, Mr. Elam, when we send things to council for discussion, we've kind of done it both ways. Sometimes it goes for discussion and we don't get a presentation. It just goes, council votes on it, and we're done. Sometimes, though, we do get a presentation. And I think that would be valuable, because I know I've talked to other council members who still have a lot of questions, and I'm not sure we've asked all their questions on here. Yeah.
So I actually think this is a bit of a unique situation, and given the nature of it being a fee, we're going to go ahead and hold a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So that's been the plan, is to have a public hearing. So that would include a full presentation, as well as opportunity for the public to interact through the normal public hearing process. And then with that, the schedule, actually, it's on the screen, would be the public hearing with the potential for the first reading and then the second reading. So the recommendation from the committee, I guess, really isn't contemplated.
Just really send it to council for discussion or for public hearing. Either motion. Does that work? Yeah. All right, there was something else I wanted to ask. No, I think especially if you could take Mr. Felker's, some of his points under consideration and presentation, I think that would be helpful. But other than that, I don't think I have anything. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Chair?
Councilmember Felker.
I move that we advance the,
Or, we only have a discussion, so do we? No, we do have an ordinance. I'm sorry, we do.
okay,
I've-
so,
Continue.
yep, sure.
It's-
Chair, I move to advance TMP 2923 to the full council with a recommendation for discussion.
Second.
That good or no good? I got a little head shake from Mr. Johnson. Is that sufficient, or do we need to actually approve of it? I mean, we can send something with a divided vote, can't we?
Yes, correct. And the form of motion that you made is acceptable in this case. We're planning on holding a public hearing regardless of what your form of motion was. And your form of motion is, as you stated, it is not specifically recommending approval. It's for further discussion, which is exactly what we intend to do anyway.
So moved, Chair.
Basically, what he said is anything we do doesn't matter. I think that's what he's,
Or you could add your recommendation also if you want.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Felker, a second from Councilmember Pryor. Could I have, are there any more discussion items at this point in time? No? All right. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hodges?
Aye.
Councilmember Felker?
Aye.
Chair Edson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Pryor?
Aye.
And I would also, now I remember what I was going to say, I would also like to point out to the committee members that this is a fee. So these fees are reviewed every year. So if something happens for future councils where they want to change that fee, that is available to future councils, correct? All right, thank you.
Chair,
Yeah.
I'll mention one other thing connected with that. The actual fee amounts would go into the schedule of fees and charges. So all the amounts that have been discussed tonight are not actually in the ordinance that's in front of you and won't be in the ordinance that'll be in front of the city council. It's the schedule of fees and charges that would need to have that piece of it added also as a
Okay.
companion item.
Yeah, I wondered why they weren't in there. All right, thank you. All right, let's see if we can get through this last item. Item E, 2024-6106, discussion, Lee Summit publication notices in a daily newspaper.
David Bushak, Chief Counsel of Economic Development and Planning. I think my presentation for this item consists of 2 points. One is a quick recap of the legal issue that the full council's already heard about, and then second, dealing with the issue that I think you wanted to discuss tonight. So first, a quick recap of the issue that we're facing. When the city reached 100,000 population, there's a specific statute that says all of our publication notices need to be in a daily newspaper. The Lee Summit Tribune is not a daily newspaper. It's only published 1 day a week. And so we've identified another newspaper, the Pulse Legal Publications, that's the name of that newspaper, that is a daily newspaper, and we have been publishing in that newspaper. So we're meeting the legal requirements by statute, given our population size. So that's my quick summary of the legal issue you've already heard about. And then I believe the discussion item for this committee is, and this is where you can tell me if I have the issue right or if there's more to it, should the city also publish in the Tribune as the local newspaper, even though that's not legally required or legally sufficient? I think that's the issue that you're facing. So to help answer that question, we've collected some information, and I'm relying on others for this data collection. But I think we have as much data as we can collect. And I think one of the key questions is, what's the cost difference between the Pulse and the Tribune? And so here's what we put together. So these are comparable standard zoning publication notices. And side, that's the Pulse. So there, one other comment. The Pulse's pricing is per line. Yes, per line. And then the Tribune is per column inch. So their pricing is a little different. But these are basically the same roughly the equivalent same notices. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Planning Commission of the city at this time, on this date, for this application. Then it has more information, and the same with the Tribune notice. So these are roughly equivalent. One's in a single column format, one I think is in a dual column format, but you see the price difference between the Pulse and the Tribune. The Tribune is more expensive than the Pulse for a roughly equivalent ad, including the small map that has to be included. So that's a basic price comparison for your information. And then there's some other data that we collected on like circulation and number of what their circulation is. And the Pulse has 132 paid paper subscriptions. That's the number of people that receive the actual newspaper. And they have 255 online paid subscribers. And they have 200 non-subscriber clicks per day. That's the data that the Pulse has provided to us. And the Tribune but that's a daily newspaper. So every day, those are the numbers. The Tribune has 1,110 paper subscribers for their one-day-a-week publication. And then it's free to view online, but there's a delay. I think there may be like a 2-day delay before the same is available to the public generally after it's released to their subscribers. And they also deliver 200 courtesy newspapers each week for their Saturday newspaper, which I know there's some city departments that receive those newspapers, for example. They just receive a free copy. And I think that's the extent of the data that we have for circulation. So we're meeting the legal requirements now. We're publishing in the Pulse, and I guess the question is, should we also publish in addition in the Tribune? And the last thing that I'll note is, in the schedule of fees and charges, there is a flat fee that's charged that's associated with all of the publications. So and this is where I need some help to elaborate on this, but I think it covers our publication costs, the cost of the signs that you see posted on the property, the cost of staff time to do all that work. It's all sort of wrapped up in one fee. And I think it's safe to conclude that fee would have to go up if we also publish in the Tribune in addition to the notices that we have today. And I think Josh was available to answer questions if we need to talk about what that fee covers. So that's the extent of the information that I can provide to you, and we'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Councilmember Pryor, did you have a question?
I do. Well, yeah, I have a thought. So I know the Pulse is quite a bit more expensive for like people to just subscribe to. So I think it's important to publish it in both, just because I feel like the Tribune's so much easier to get. I had never even heard of the Pulse until this entire process, and I'm sure most people have not, judging from their small amount of subscribers. So I feel like, as far as the Tribune, it's a Lee Summit paper. Yeah, you didn't mention how many clicks they get on Facebook. Did you? Maybe I just didn't hear.
I don't know if I have that data.
Okay. I know they get a lot.
Probably so.
So, yeah, I think in being transparent is important, and I do think it's important to continue to publish in the Tribune too. So, thank you.
Mr. Johnson, how much do you estimate an increase in fees if we do this?
Just a quick estimation, we have a well-worn process with the Tribune, so it wouldn't be like, an unknown to us.
Okay.
I'm thinking, I'm being very rough here, so I apologize. Probably going from the 165 to 200 seems about right to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Felker? Thoughts?
Yeah, Pulse is just a legal it just goes to lawyers. Those 130 are lawyers, that's at lawyers. I'm serious. No other person is going to subscribe to that publication. But if it's what we have to do, check the box, and I guess that's just, we have to do it. It's like, that's our only option. So we're just saying, are we willing to continue to provide a public service to our citizens? And we already, as I think we've said in previous meetings, and certainly we as a city go above and beyond in terms of providing notice. We go beyond our own requirements.
We go beyond the state law requirement. So before we hold a zoning, I'm talking just in the zoning context, the only requirement of state statute is to publish one notice in the newspaper before that public hearing. That's it. So all the other notices
Even the
that we
signs
have,
aren't required by the
signs
state?
are not required by state law. Little letters to the surrounding property owners not required by state law. That's all extra notice that we do.
I'm going to go to Jeff City and
Yeah,
change that
only
law.
the single publication that's the only thing required to hold a public hearing and change the zoning of property.
Well, good on us. Whoever made those decisions so long ago, I know it's probably a chore. I know that, and maybe it doesn't seem like it makes a difference, but we hear from time to time people paying attention to that stuff. So I thank you, staff, for carrying out what we do as a city. In terms of man hours to additionally, send this to the Tribune as well as the Pulse, is this really asking a lot of staff? We know we're talking about cost, right? We're going to add a cost that we have to now, but especially if we're going to continue to go with the Tribune as well. But in terms of man hours, is there a lot that's asked when you've got two publications you got to bring the notice to versus just one?
It's an additional email, to be quite honest with you.
One, maybe two.
Yeah, one, well,
A reply, right?
twice, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Realistically, it's not. Shouldn't be a ton.
Can I got to bring this up, I guess.
Please.
So if we're about to hold a public hearing, say it's all the way to council, it's all the way to the final step, and somehow something got messed up, the Tribune didn't publish, but the Pulse did.
I think it's okay.
The sign went on the site, the 300-foot notice. So this is, we're characterizing this as above and beyond, and we would not need to change the UDO or anything like that. We're just saying we're going to do this.
Yeah. That's how I would characterize this, which means as in the future, if sometime one staff, you all have brilliant memories, but if someone someday forgot and just stopped doing it, it could just fall off. I'm not recommending that, but meaning we're not going to have something to necessarily hold us to it except for our institutional memory. Once we decide this today, or bring this back to council.
I'll write it down, but
send at least an email and then reply.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical. I'm just kind of elevating. Okay, we decide this. I've done this. You think you had a habit, and all of a sudden you forgot. 2 years later, you're like, oh, I used to do that every day, and then but we're not talking about necessarily putting it in the city ordinances as we're going to also do this. That's not what's being proposed.
Yeah, because, there's a lot of things. Does the Tribune stay around forever? Does state law change where we're not required to do the newspaper? There's a lot of scenarios you could play out. But.
And some of our above and beyond what we do already, some of that is is that in ordinance-based?
Things we mentioned are in the
ordinance-based,
yeah.
okay. I'm just trying to, help us understand as we're doing this, I like the idea because the Tribune's still kind of our only local thing, and people do read it, and it does get it out to some people who would otherwise, I think they would be disappointed if we didn't. So it might not be necessarily the most efficient thing for us to do as a city, but I'm in favor of it, so.
Yeah, I would agree completely with Councilmember Felker. I would love to keep this going, so.
So what else I think you have a unanimous consent here. What
Yeah,
else do
so
you
it
need?
sounds like that's enough information for staff to act on it and start making that part of our practice. If there's ever a question, I'll go ahead and say this. If there's ever a question, or if we ever hit the point that Councilmember Felker just mentioned, which is we forgot to do that thing that we were doing for a while, UDO could be amended, and haven't really thought about what it would say, but it would be words to the effect of if the daily newspaper that we're publishing in is not based in Lee Summit, then a notice shall also be published in a newspaper that's based in Lee Summit to the extent possible.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have to do that in the UDO, given what you said and given what we hear our directions to be.
Okay. Well, I think you have unanimous agreement on one thing. One thing, that's all.
Great.
All right. Roundtable, anybody, real quick? Yeah, Josh. I'm going to staff roundtable.